Today I'm going to show you how I am going to try and make a washboard instrument, that is. I've been looking on the web for some time and I've not found one within my price range that looks half decent. So what I'm going to try and do is create one from bits and bobs which I've picked up over the years. So to begin with, today I'm going to start and make the two uprights, the two legs. So what we're going to do is create two legs which have a header of 5 inches, a play area of 14 inches and a lower leg of 5 inches, making a total of 24 inches, which I think is going to be adequate. The width of the unit is going to be around about 12 inches in total, and that I'll show you now. To do that, we're going to need some pieces of wood like this. This one is 10 by 12 millimeter, and there are two of those. And we also have this length of wood which is 6 by 21 millimeters, and this is going to form the basis for the two legs. It's 2.4 meters long, which I'm going to cut into 4 equal pieces, which will make each piece 0.6 of a meter long, roughly about 24 inches. So now we've got 4 equal lengths of 6 by 21 mil wood. The way this works is we're going to put a piece or a spacer between the two lengths of the first leg, the one leg, like so. So we need to cut down the spacer. It'll make a U-shaped piece, if I can just rotate that. You can see there that there is a groove now we've created, into which the slats are going to slide, like so. And that's going to be the beginning of the instrument. What I would say is, before you cut, use the old adage, measure twice, cut once. And just make sure that they're all as close to being an equal length as you possibly can make it. I've used a ordinary junior hacksaw to do the cutting, so it's a fine blade. You cut halfway through, turn it over and then cut through from the other side. That way you won't get any fraying. Okay, what you should have now are 2 lengths for each leg of 6 by 21 and 1 spacer. In this case, mine is 10 by 12 millimeters, and it's slightly shorter by about 10 mil than the actual legs, and the reason will become clear later. What this must be, though, is the same width as the diameter of the tube that you're going to use, like that. Here's a temporarily put together leg, and this is how the tube is going to fit in. That's going to sit in like so. I think there's going to be about 16 or 20 of these tubes, and they're all going to line up down there to be glued in later. What I'm going to do now is construct these legs using small tacks. Again, these have been in my shed for some time, so they're looking a bit rusty. Using glue and the tacks. Now what you see here are the 2 sides and the spacer for one leg. What I've done is I've tacked, or I've hammered tacks through one side, this side, so they're just sticking out to the other side, and the same on this piece. Tacks are in place, but they're just protruding through slightly. And the reason for that is, and I'll show you here, is that you can actually tap them together temporarily. They're easily parted. This is the other leg, by the way. And what I'll do now is to take it apart, lay the glue in, put it back together, and the pins will show me where the legs, where these pieces are going to fit together. They'll help to locate the two side pieces and the spacer. And all I need to do then, once I've located those, and then I'll tap them together, glue them, and then tap them together. Right, you should now have two legs looking like this, lightly tacked together so that the tacks imprint themselves into the spacer and firm enough to just hold it together, like so. I've also mentioned that there is a little gap at the top of the spacer, and the reason for that is that eventually when these are together and glued up, there is going to be spaces in between, like so, which is going to form the basis of the whole frame. What I'm going to do now is to use some PVA glue. I'm going to separate these two legs into their components by teasing them apart like so. Right, so having separated the sides and the spacer on both of these, and then glued them with PVA is what I use, you should have something looking like this, which is a U-section, two legs, and that U-section should be the right width now to take the pieces of tubing, like so, with not very much slack in between. And so that'll be the next thing. We'll set it up so that we can use the pieces of wood which will separate the two legs, and we'll do a dummy run and put these pieces of tube in between and set it up as it's going to be once it's all nailed together. So as a mock-up assembly, what we have here are now the two legs and the spaces in between, which are going to be the boards, top and bottom boards, and with those put together, this particular washboard is measuring 10 and 13/16 crosswise, the same there, and of course its height is going to be actually 60 centimetres or 23 3/4 inches, roughly speaking. It's all been made out of, as I said before, bits and bobs that I got in the shed, and I did find some tubing that I had, which I cut to 10-inch lengths. Just make sure that, yeah, they're all 10 inches. Of course that's got to be the same width as your wood, top and bottom, so that they will fit nicely and there's no rock. If there is, you're going to have to file down the pieces of tubing. And that's where we are at the moment. The next stage is going to be, you'll be making a little roof as I've done, or you needn't do that, it can just be as it is. But I chose to do this, and that's going to sit on the top, like so. That'll be at the top there. Eventually this is going to have an insignia on it of some sort. I'm not decided what it's going to say yet. And there we are for the moment. Right, so now I've cut 19 of those tubes. They're not all identical in diameter, but as long as when you mount them in the frame, you have one surface which is flat, you can pack the back of the slightly smaller diameter tubes so that you have a completely flat surface here. we've made the roof, as I call it. We've got 3 boards here and a 4th board here. This top board will sit between the 2 legs. There'll be 2 boards down the bottom and maybe yet a 3rd. I've not decided whether I need that one as yet. And also you're going to need a top piece which is going to sit between the top of the legs. Like so. It needs cutting to size, and that'll be the mount for the roof. This piece will sit in between the legs. Just show you. And the roof will go on top, like so. The tubes, of course, will then go to sit in between, like so. The lower boards will sit like so. Generally that's how it's going to fit together. Right, so that's going to be the general shape of it. What I'm going to do now is, because it's obviously going to be strummed, these pieces of wood have got to be sanded down, smoothed off and varnished, and I'll come back when I've done all that. Right, I thought I'd better show you the interring, as it were. I've not yet varnished this. I have sanded down the corners so that they're smooth. And what I've also done is I've glued it all together, so the roof, as I call it, is there. The top board is in place and that's glued. While you're doing this, just make sure that the distance there is the same as the distance there. Right, I've made the bottom board out of 3 pieces of wood that I've got, like so. I've glued them all together, just three pieces of ordinary pine. I've also put a bit of a spacer at the back because these didn't slot in tightly, so I've had to make up the gap by putting 2 spacers either side. And you see I've got 4 pins stuck in there. The idea for those is so that I can stand it while I'm varnishing it. This I made a little support whilst I'm going to be varnishing that. I've sanded it down quite smoothly on the edges, which is important, and I've sanded it down all over with some fine sandpaper. I've dusted it off with a fine brush, so it's now ready for varnishing. What I'm going to use is this Mini Paints Yacht Varnish High Gloss. So it takes a couple of days to dry. I'll get back to you then. Okay, we've now reached the stage where we can put it all together as I have done. You'll see that this is the board that we've been varnishing, the one that had the pins stuck in it. Nice smooth glossy finish. I actually screwed this board in place. I didn't glue it because I thought to myself at some point I might want to change the shape of it, reduce the size. I might want to get to the tubes. So I've left it just screwed in, 4 screws, no problem. And there we are really. You should by now have it looking something like this. My intention is that I intend to put an insignia on there, something like Ohio Washboard Company. I'll have to think about that, but that's something you could do. White paint. And then we're going to attach to it all of the things that you might want to use. You can have a horn, you can use a bell, cow horns, cowbells I should say, and of course a strap if you intend to use it standing up. So the next stage will be to fit all of those things. Well, there we have it, the finished article, as I showed you. Now what we said we were going to do was to fit the various instruments that you can attach to a washboard, and here I've got a box of items which you can easily get off the web. So I'll just put this to one side and show you. The last item that I received was a cymbal. Most, if not all of these, are very inexpensive. This cymbal, I've already attached 2 felt pads to it for mounting. This cymbal came from China. It's a firm called Wish, and it cost £4. So, very cheap. You cannot, I don't think, get an 8-inch cymbal in this country. So you don't need anything bigger, and that's ideal. This, of course, is a horn, which is attached. If you look on YouTube, you'll see that it's attached to most washboards. It seems to be the instrument of choice. Again, very cheap, 2 or 3 quid. This is a wood block. Two different sounds. Quite light. Again, £4 or £5. This is a call bell. Good if you're trying to imitate a train or whatever. £2 or £3. Now the heavy stuff. This is a cowbell. That's 7-inch. This is a 5-inch. You can play with the cymbals. £6 each from a firm in Burton-on-Trent called Norman's Music. Excellent firm. And that's it really. All of these available, cheap, locally or on the web. There is no specific way of fitting these to a washboard. You can choose it yourself. If you go onto YouTube, you'll see various players in bands. There's one called Tuba Lily, absolutely brilliant. If you Google that, you'll see a washboard player or 2 on there, and they are amazing. So there you are, you have your washboard, you've got your thimbles. I've got 6 here. You just choose how many suits you to use, but so 6, these were sourced locally. And that really is the end of it. Oh, one other item, the strap. And this I sourced from a local firm. It's a 2-inch wide guitar strap. Let's get this right. And again, for what it is, it's very cheap. £4 or £5 I think I paid for that. So the whole thing, as long as you can make it from your bits and bobs in your shed, it's not going to cost you a lot of money. And it's got great visual impact if you're in a band. It's amazing. Very good for ragtime, blues. You'll notice that on this now there are several protrusions which are there to hold the various additional bits of equipment that I showed you earlier on. Oh, by the way, the band I mentioned is not Tuba Lily, it's Tuba Skinny. It's a street band from Los Angeles, if I didn't mention that before. That's the bracket for the clown horn, or call it what you will. This is a bracket for the cymbal. I'll show you how that works. This is the bracket for the cowbell. And finally, there's a couple of small items here which I use to put the call bell in. And the back, of course, is a couple of buttons which you usually use for ukulele or guitar to hold onto the strap. That's how I've attached the fixing for the cowbell. It's just a screw with a washer on. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I attach the various pieces. Bring it up a little closer. First of all, the clown horn. It comes apart quite easily, so it's easy to use the brackets that come with it to attach, like so. Simple matter of sliding one on the other. I leave it loose so that it can be moved around if you need to. Second item, the call bell. It's sort of directional. If you don't have it in the right place, it doesn't work. You have to have it in a situation where that bell, that clapper actually hits. So I've put a little marker on the top there just to tell me which way it should go, and I slide it in those 2 brackets like so. Just press it down to make sure it stays in place. Thirdly, it's the cowbell. And this, as I say, this goes on like so. That slides on like so. And I've got a little peg. I'll drill the hole in the dowel, and the peg slides on like so. Finally, the cymbal. I made a wire holder like so, a spacer to make sure it doesn't drop down too far and contact the wire holder. piece of rubber tube to keep it in place on top, and it slides into this bracket here. I've shaped it so that when it is in place it locks down and doesn't interfere with anything. It'll only move so far. So, and that's how I've set up my accessories. Now you may have a different idea, which is fine, but I've done it this way because if I should need to carry this anywhere, as it is, it wouldn't sit in a bag very well. So I've made it so that it all comes apart, so that if I do make a bag, which I shall be doing, it can carry this on its own, and these will just slot down the side. It just makes it easier. Yes, I didn't use the large cowbell. I found that it was too heavy. I can change it for this if I should in future want to. And neither did I use the wooden block. Again, because there isn't really any room for it. It could be hooked onto the side, but I think there's quite enough on there to make a performance out of it. And there we go. And finally, probably the most important part of the setup are the thimbles. I've got 4 sizes there. On the right hand, got the very smallest. Next to it is what I would say was the 3rd finger. Next to that, the index finger, and finally on the left, the middle finger. And I'll show you how they go on. Okay, here we go. Little finger, 3rd finger, middle finger, and the index finger. And this got the index finger and the middle finger. Now, thimbles come in various sizes and they don't always fit, but essentially you can manage with it. I've seen some people who use a glove and they actually glue the thimbles to the glove, but for the purposes of a demonstration I think this will be fine. Right, now I'm going to give you a very short demonstration on how this works, because I've never played one of these before making this. I've had a little bit of practice, but it's not great. But all it is to show you just how it works. There are several videos on YouTube which will show you the rudimentals of playing a washboard, but all I can do is show you roughly how it's supposed to, I suppose, play. So they tell you to start with the right hand, or if you're left-handed, the left hand, and it's a tap and like so. And then you bring the left hand in. something like that. Well, there we are. This is something that the ordinary guy can make. You don't have to be particularly a DIYer. The materials are quite easily accessible, except I should suggest that these may not be easy to get. I'll give you the dimensions, and if you can acquire those, the rest of it is really, as I say, just bits of wood that you can get from anywhere. Most of this I didn't have to buy, it was already in the shed. This top piece I decided to shape. It doesn't mean that it has to be shaped. If you do shape it, that's fine, just make sure that it's secure, because this in effect is the carry handle. So you've got to make sure that it's well nailed and glued, screwed if you wish. This equipment here, very cheap. As I say, I got this from China. This came from the UK, this from the UK, and again this came from the UK. So really quite cheap and very doable. The strap I got online, I think that came from the UK. It wasn't expensive. It's got several different designs, and the attaching buttons, they're usually something that's used with a guitar or a ukulele. I may have mentioned that. Whether you're going to find this difficult to play is up to the individual. I have an incentive. I really wanted to be able to get one of these and learn to play it. And I'm only, a couple of weeks into that, so, and things are going okay. It's really a matter of whether you can pick up a beat and get a consistent beat to the way that you actually strum these tubes. If you were to go onto the web, you'd probably not be able to pick one of these up for less than, I would say, 80 or 90 pounds. And others I've seen 180 and more. So this is cheap and cheerful, but it works just as well. I wish you all the luck with it. And if you do have a group of some sort, albeit guitar, singing, ukulele, or even a band, they're a very good contribution. I shall leave you with that now and say thank you for watching and goodbye.